On today's episode of Lawyer Interviews, we have the wonderful opportunity of speaking with Katie Taylor, who practices out of Marietta, Georgia, in estate planning, personal injury, and wrongful death. Katie gives us the 411 on when is the right time to involve an estate planning attorney, describes the probate process, and gives us the 411 on personal injury and wrongful death. We're excited. We hope you love the show. Hey, everybody, it's Reggie with Lawyer Interviews. We're excited today, and we'd like to first thank our generous sponsors who are today our friends at #LawTegic and Select America's Legal Elite and Media. Today, we are so excited. We have a wonderful guest, Katie Taylor, who is an attorney out of Marietta, Georgia. Hi, Katie. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing great. How are you?
Good. Thank you so much for coming on Lawyer Interviews. We're excited to talk to you.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Well, Katie, so first off, I'd love to first talk about how you're up and running your own shop, and you've been doing this for, you said, almost the anniversary of your year in the firm. So tell us a little bit more about how that came about.
I graduated from law school back in 2018, and I worked under a couple of different firms in different areas. So I did estate planning, probate, and personal injury. And then back in 2021, I decided to take that leap of faith and I started my own firm. It's called Georgia Legal Counsel, and we're based out of Marietta, Georgia.
Very cool. And you practiced, and the areas you practice are personal injury, estate planning, and wrongful death, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Very fun. So now, first off, I am all about the female-owned firm, going out on your own. How has it been, going out on your own? I mean, that is such a leap of faith and scary. Like, how has it been the last year?
Well, honestly, it's been a struggle. Figuring out your schedule, that work-life balance is huge. I feel like I'm still working on that. It's we'll see how I get, in a few years if I'm still struggling with that. Hopefully not. But as of right now, I feel like I'm taking and talking to clients at all hours. Anytime I can be in front of someone and help them, that's when I'm doing it, even if it's at 8 p.m. at night. That's just my current schedule right now.
Perfect. Well, hey, and I can tell you after doing several rounds of these lawyer interviews, I don't think any attorney, even, 30 years out, has real work-life balance. So, I think you're doing great.
Just that's what I've heard.
Do what works for you.
Right.
Well, I'd love to talk to you a little bit, Katie, about probate. I think it's one of those topics that people are very uncomfortable with because it surrounds the big death word, right? So when should people get an estate planning attorney like you involved?
Well, if you've done the correct planning ahead of time before someone has passed away, that's the whole point of estate planning. But when probate gets involved is when there's been no estate planning. Even when there is a will and there's properties that need to be probated, such as a house or something like that, that's when you need an estate planning or a probate attorney, sorry. And you really want to hire a probate attorney because if you try to handle that stuff yourself, you're going to find yourself very frustrated. You may file the wrong documents, and that can cost extra money. So it's really the best idea to contact a probate attorney as soon as someone passes away so that you get that head start doing everything correctly.
Right. And how long can probate cases take? I'm not really familiar with the area, not my wheelhouse, but in your general knowledge and where you practice, how long do they typically take to go through if it's like a simple will?
So that's a very good question. And that can vary from estate to estate. And that can also vary from county to county. Some counties are more backed up handling the probate paperwork, and some aren't. Generally, I would say about 6 months is probably typical to handle an estate. If it's a little bit more complex, I've seen one that I handled before that the probate was 20 years old. So it was that was a very complicated case. But in general, if you get stuff started right away, hopefully everything will be completed within 6 months, maybe a year.
Okay, very cool. And tell us a little bit about, you said you want to plan beforehand, before someone's death. So what if a client walks in and says like, hey, look, I've got some assets, I've got like a house, I've got bank accounts. I mean, what is your go-to for these people? I mean, not giving, free advice here, but I mean, what would you advise a client coming in and say, hey, here's your different options?
Well, I guess my first question to clients is, what is your goal in estate planning? Is your goal to be a little bit more private? Is it to protect your assets? Or is it just simply to say, hey, I want this money or my house to go to a certain beneficiary? If it's something as simple like that, then a will may be advisable. That is the most simple, it's the cheapest estate planning document you can have.
And can you talk us through like a will, like what, I mean, people are always, we see it on movies or even on like Knives Out or, the Anna Nicole Smith or whatever, we've got Hollywood, it's in movies, but it can maybe explain for viewers who may not understand exactly what a will is and what it does, because they may not know.
Okay, so a will, it's not like what you see on movies or anything like that. There's no official reading of the will or anything that you see on movies. I always laugh at that. But basically, a will is just a simple document. It says, these are my family members. This is who I want my property or my assets to go to, and it just lists out who they want it to go to. And sometimes it lists out even backups. If someone were to pass away, then this is the person I want to inherit that portion. So it goes through stuff like that. You can also include information where if you don't want someone to inherit unless they graduated college, or you want them to wait until they're 30 years or older to inherit, because we all know when you're in your early 20s, you just spend and spend, and you may not be responsible.
You don't want to pay
a lot of
Vegas and like gambling out their inheritance.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a good idea to at least have a will in place. It just lays out what you want, and your family members don't have to try to guess what you wanted when you pass away.
Okay. And if there is no will, that's when the estate would go to probate, correct?
Well, you still go to probate even if you have a will,
right?
In at least the state of Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't have a will, yes, you still go through probate. It's a little bit more of a process to go through probate without a will. So a will definitely helps. The way to get out of not having to do probate at all, because I know people don't want to waste the time, the money, and all of that, is if you consider doing a trust. And that can be complicated in itself. It's a little scary, but that's what we're here for, is to help you out through that process.
And I'd love for you to explain too, I mean, there's so many different areas of estate planning, but maybe the difference between a will and trust, and generally what a trust is.
Okay, that's a good question. So a trust allows you to avoid probate. Basically, what triggers probate is if you have an asset and there is no listed beneficiary. Mm-hmm. So such as your house, real property, or if you can even have, for instance, life insurance. You typically list a beneficiary. That's a non-probate asset. But something like a house, bank account, stuff like that, if there's no listed beneficiaries, that can go through probate. And a trust, if you put all those assets that would trigger probate into the trust, then you can avoid probate altogether.
Oh, very cool.
So that's a big pro. And then the other thing that is a big pro with trust is that it's a little bit more private. Whereas a will, it's filed with the county and people can see that. They can see that so-and-so has died and kind of where assets are going to, which can, have creditors running after you.
Right.
But with a trust, it's a little bit more private and there's more protection for that.
Right. And I think it's very interesting. I think some people think, file with the court. I'm like, when you file it, unless it's sealed, it's public, there's a right for the public to be able to access this information. And I'm sure it's shocking to people when they realize, like grandma's, amount she left is, all displayed for the public to see. And like you said, creditors or maybe random people who may think that they have some interest in a will or probate come forward out of the woodwork, so that is a really interesting reason to look at a trust maybe over a will, depending on assets. That's a very, very interesting part. And tell me a little bit more too. I know that there are different like tax implications too with trusts. Are there any kind of benefits to doing a trust that way?
That's a very complicated question. And I work with tax attorneys since I'm not exactly a tax attorney on that.
Mhm.
But with certain type of trust, there can be negatives and positive repercussions with a trust. It just kind of depends on what type of trust you have, and just overall, it's a good idea to get a tax attorney involved too during that estate planning if you do decide to have a trust.
Very cool. And that's neat too, because, you mentioned you work very closely with tax attorneys, and a lot of business attorneys do that. Other different areas of practice will do that. And it's very interesting because some attorneys, I mean, we can't practice it all or be experts in it all, but it's neat that you have access to these other advisors that can help your clients along the way, because there are confusing tax questions. And there's no one better than someone that practices that 24/7. Right?
Exactly.
Very cool. Well, I'd love to know too, how long would it take someone to, come in, get some advice for you before hey, will or trust or what?
Well, typically I offer a free consultation, and normally they last about an hour or so, depending on, how much we have to go over. And then from there, we can really determine what route we should take. Should we, just do a simple will with some powers of attorney, or should we, go down the road for the trust? That's pretty much the first step. Is you always want to meet with your attorney and discuss what your goals are, and really think ahead. When you do meet with your attorney, think, who do you want stuff to go to? Do you want the house to be sold, or do you want it to be rented out? Are there any types of age limit restrictions you want to have? And so that's really helpful for their attorney if you've thought about those things ahead of time before your consultation.
Right, right. That makes sense. And I'm sure also you've got implications of, I've heard of this happening where you've got maybe beneficiaries who maybe have some kind of special need, or, something that needs to be written into the will specifically to take care of that disability. How do you advise clients who are concerned about their predecessors with maybe extra financial or disability needs?
And that's a very good concern. So basically, in all of my trusts, I include some type of language that deals specifically with that. Obviously, you don't want their benefits to be affected. You want them to still be able to receive their benefits. And a lot of times it results in having more than one trust if they do go down that route. But there is language that I include in there if a beneficiary is special needs or anything like that, and we don't want to affect their benefits, then there's a clause in there that speaks specifically to that.
Very cool. Very cool. Because I mean, sometimes you may not know if that ends up even being the case, because people can get in car accidents, or you never know what life will deal you. People can, die before be a beneficiary and die before they can actually inherit. And so, I mean, I'm sure you deal with, what happens in that case. Does it go to their kids, or does it go back to the other siblings, or, how,
right. And that's our job as estate planning attorneys, is to really think about all those what if situations that people may not normally think about. People don't imagine that they're going to leave one day from their house, get in a car accident, and then become paraplegic. Sorry.
Right.
People don't imagine that, but anything can happen in life. And so you want to be prepared for that. And that's why it's really important to think about hiring an estate planning attorney. Even in your 30s, it's important.
Right. Well, that's the thing. Okay. This is going to be awful. I don't even have a will.
Oh no.
Will or trust. And I've been practicing for a while, and I'm like, you think about those things. I'm like, I really should have one of those. So advice from Katie Taylor right now. What's the right age to start planning on this stuff?
To be honest, I'll say even when you are, you turn over the age of 18 when you're legal. But especially if you have investment properties, you're buying a house, you have children, that is, a no-brainer. You definitely need it by then.
Right. And because again, if you don't, the alternative is, for most states, at least, the probate laws take over. Whatever is in that code is kind of what dictates how that property gets distributed if you don't have a will or a trust, correct?
Exactly. Yes.
Right. Okay. I mean, and sometimes you don't want the state deciding that. If you can decide it, you decide it, right?
Exactly. I mean, you you spent your whole life earning this money. Why would you want the state to determine where things go?
Right.
So,
right. Exactly. And a lot of people I think are surprised by that too. They're like, does the judge just say, hey, this person gets it, this person gets it? It's not that way. It's codified. It's like the judge has to follow the law of whatever the state says. If it, is distributed evenly, or I know there's the per stirpes, or I can't remember.
per capita.
Per capita. Thank you. You just re-educated me. I see. Very cool. Well, you also practice personal injury, which is another really fascinating area. I'd love to know what kind of, cases you handle. If someone was a client coming to you, what kind of personal injury cases would you take?
So primarily, which will be no surprise, would be car accidents. There's so many car accidents, especially in the state of Georgia. We're one of the highest.
I didn't know that.
Yes, I believe we may be number 2. We're definitely top 4. I know that.
Wow.
So for accidents, so beware anybody coming from out of state, coming to Georgia. So I primarily handle car accidents. I do handle the occasional slip and falls and stuff like that. But yes, auto accidents is my bread and butter for personal injury.
Very cool. So, and I'm guessing obviously on the plaintiff side, so probably suing insurance companies or another automobile driver. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And how is that dealing with insurance companies?
Well, it's funny because I used to be on the insurance side. So that's very helpful. I would say, even if you do not go with my firm, always ask your attorney if they've had experience, if they've ever worked with an insurance company, because I think it's a valuable experience to understand the whole, every side. There's always a side to each story. So I think it's important that an attorney that's handling a personal injury case has experience on both sides.
Of course. And what a great insight too, because it's like, you know, the other side, and you also know how insurance companies think, their rules, their regulations, and exactly how they handle these kinds of cases. So I'm sure that's an invaluable asset to your clients.
It really is. It really is. But as far as handling with the insurance companies, I'll say it can be a headache. I'll just leave it at that.
I've heard there's some, bureaucracy and hierarchy and some fun.
Yes. But I mean, that's why you hire a personal injury attorney. Take that headache off of your shoulders. A lot of times we do know other people or have a better understanding of the case. And so we can really get you that top dollar, versus if you try to handle it yourself, you're just going to settle for a low ball.
Right. Do you see a lot of clients that come in later to you who have tried to handle it themselves? Or have you seen that happen in practice with other people?
Oh, yes. I've been practicing for long enough to see that. And that I definitely do not advise. I definitely advise calling an attorney if you can at the scene of the accident, if not the next day.
Okay.
The most important thing is we want to make sure that your health and everything is taken care of, that you see the right doctors, because some people just don't know who to go to.
Right.
And financially can, get in trouble that way and everything. So we really like to take care of all aspects. We want to have your financial needs at the forefront, of course, and then obviously take care of you health-wise. That's the most important thing that you can't replace is your health.
Right. And I'm sure that can hurt so many different areas. People don't realize, work, family, ability to just live a normal life. And all of a sudden, like a car accident can change everything for you. And like you said, call an attorney sooner than later, because it's also probably easier for you to not have to do the catch up.
That is very true. And don't speak to the insurance companies. That's the one thing.
Yes. So Katie, we know you also handle wrongful death cases. Now give us a description of what a wrongful death case might look like.
Well, a lot of wrongful death, there are accidents that can happen in the hospital, or even maybe someone was struck by a car and unfortunately just passed away from those injuries. And those cases become very complicated. As attorneys, we want you to focus on the grieving process as a family, and let us handle the personal injury wrongful death case. Let us do all of that hard work so you don't have to wear that on your shoulders as well.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's the thing too, is people, I think it's kind of the same with estate planning too. And I'm guilty of it. You don't want to think about these things when the tragedy, of a death or an injury, comes up. And it's so nice to be able to know, oh, I have an attorney. I can contact this attorney if needs be. And when something arises, because then you can get acting on it fast.
Yeah. It's one thing less on our plates of life, and we already have enough. Everybody has enough to take care of. So being able to take that off of your plate, it's really helpful.
Right. Exactly. Well, Katie, I'm going to ask you another free ball question here. What was your favorite class in law school?
Oh, goodness. I will say I really enjoyed torts, which involves personal injury. So it kind of, and actually I will say wills and trusts, pretty much where I landed is my favorite two classes.
Perfect. Least favorite. Let's hear it. Dig the dirt.
I think everybody, and I think literally every law student can say this, is probably contracts.
Really? Oh, see,
you're a contract nerd.
But no, most people snooze. Like, I don't have any of the sexy stories. I'm like, when I talk about contracts, and everyone's like, shut up. No, you have the good stories.
Yeah.
Well, Katie, it's been so wonderful talking to you today. And thank you so much for joining Lawyer Interviews. I'd love to also let people know where they can find you on social media, because I know you do have an Instagram page, but if you have any Twitter or TikToks or anything else, will you let us know where we can find you?
Of course. So of course I have a website, georgialegalcounsel.com. And then you can also find me on Instagram, Georgia Legal Counsel. I have not ventured out to TikTok or Twitter yet, but maybe one day I'll get a little inspiration and do it. But as for now, the best way to reach me is my website or Instagram.
Perfect. Well, Katie, thank you again for joining us today for Lawyer Interviews. We'd like to thank everybody for watching. And again, a special thanks for our sponsor, LawTegic, and Select America's Legal Elite and Media. Please connect with LawTegic for disruptive branding solutions to get you and your news story out to your clients and the rest of the world on places like Yahoo Finance, Forbes, Entrepreneur Inc., USA Today, and more. Thanks, everybody. See you next time. Thank you, Katie.
Thank you.